Lovers of lore, thank you for joining me for the third installment of the March of the Machine storyline. This part of the story focuses on Tamio. She is in Kamigawa now, her home plane, and the Phyrexian invasion is underway. She's currently hanging in the sky, watching as Phyrexia is decimating the city of Tawashi. And Kamigawa has spirits that reside in virtually everything on that plane of existence. So the kami spirits of Tawashi are enraged by the Phyrexian presence and are fighting back. Tamio's magic protected her, but the other lesser Phyrexians weren't so lucky, as even leaves on nearby trees turned into slicing blades that hacked at them. Tamio's powers are story-based. She always has a whole bunch of different scrolls with her that have a number of different stories etched on them. And using a powerful story, the tale of Urza, who went on to create Karn, the Silver Golem, who then went on to create Memnarch. And Memnarch was responsible for the growth of new Phyrexia, essentially Phyrexia blooming again after Urza's attempt to root it out. Tamio's stories have power, and the power of this story was massive, and so was its impact on Kamigawa. The earth ends up being torn asunder. Phyrexian symbols appear on all of the different buildings that are still left standing, and a fog rose above the city as well. It was made up of the essence of all the kami who had just died. The power of Tamio's magic reached Boseiju, the legendary tree, and it ruptured into rivers of Phyrexian oil. And at the same time, the scroll Tamio was reading from dissolved into oil and dripped out of her hands onto the devastation below. And as she looked down at her former home, a small part of her mind screamed in revulsion, but that was drowned out by the certainty of Phyrexia's perfection. At the same time below in the streets, Kea and Kaito were helping who they could while hundreds of others perished. They were waiting on the Wanderer. They end up spotting Tamio, and Kaito decides that he's going to go after her. But he's stopped by the arrival of a hesitant Nashi. Nashi is Tamio's adopted son. Nashi insists on coming along to try and talk some sense into Tamio. After reluctantly agreeing, Kaito provides an artifact that will let Nashi float alongside him so they can move up the tree together quickly, and explains it's also capable of shielding him if the need arises. So they climb the corpse of Boseiju, avoiding the oil that's weeping from its husk. They reach the top, and now they're close to Tamio. Nashi calls out to Tamio, and Tamio's head whips around the same way an owl's would while her body still faces the direction it was. Nashi makes an impassioned plea to Tamio. He mentions the stories that they read together and their past. And Tamio asked him, "Nashi, why are you here?" A split second later, Tamio's body whipped around and her face hardened. She then flung a metal shard that Kaito deflected away. Tamio entreated Nashi, "Join me, don't be afraid." But Kaito stepped in between them. "Head back to the tree, Nashi." "I can't." "Go," Kaito said while pushing him. Tamio launches her attack. Multiple scrolls fly, blinding and attempting to ensnare Kaito, but quick cuts of his blade barely kept them at bay. At the same time, Tamio was also barreling at Kaito directly with her wicked Phyrexian claws. He could feel them drag on his armor and see the sparks that they caused. Tamio fired a barrage of metal projectiles. Kaito managed to deflect all of them but one, which scored a cut along his cheek. He then lunged at her, but Tamio dodged out of the way and managed to wrap one of her scrolls around his leg. In the blink of an eye, Kaito was lifted on the ground and was dangling high in the air over the street. "Surrender," Tamio demanded. Kaito's response was to cut through the scroll. He would take his chances with the fall. His choice turned out to be the right one, because the Wanderer had finally appeared, and with her she had brought Kyodai, the guardian spirit of Kamigawa. Kyodai caught Kaito and broke his fall. The Wanderer, blade out, prepared to fight Tamiyo. Tamiyo ends up flinging more metal shards at the Wanderer, but she bats them out of the air. Tamiyo backs away near Nashi, places her hand on his head, pulls out a scroll, and starts chanting. The Wanderer snaps into action. She calls out to Coyote, who exhales pure light onto the Wanderer's blade. And then, in a massive flash of illumination, Tamiyo is cut down, and Nashi collapses crying. This is a sobering moment for the Planeswalkers as well. Kea arrives just as Tamiyo reappears. Not as a ghost, however. A magical memory of her, embedded in a scroll, had activated upon her demise. And this version of Tamiyo is made out of floating letters and symbols. She was now the story unending. The scroll Tamiyo had pulled out when she touched Nashi wasn't a Phyrexian curse. It had been this. The Wanderer had correctly deduced that Tamiyo sought to be free of Phyrexia and wanted to be struck down. She explained as much by saying the projectiles that Tamiyo had flung at her were intentionally thrown wide. And this part of the story ends with Nashi and Tamiyo as the story unending together. There was still work to be done. I hope you enjoyed this installment of the March of the Machine storyline. We will have the next part tomorrow. If you like what we're doing, you can support the channel either on Patreon or through channel memberships. Big thank you to all the channel's members and patrons. Go and enjoy some more videos while you're here. And remember, my friends, lore is life.